some say the best villains are the ones that think what they're doing is right. So, like, a good wrestling villain, for instance, thinks what he's doing is for the right cause, but in actuality, it is a bad thing. Then there's also villains that are just bat crap crazy. Like, there's no rhyme or reason for Heath Ledger's Joker, for instance. He doesn't think of himself as a hero. If they redid this list, I would guarantee that Heath Ledger's Joker would certainly be on this list. But as we mentioned, this top 50 list of the greatest villains was released back in 2003. So before we get to the top 10 greatest villains of all time, I just want to go through some of the ones that stand out on this list. So as far as modern ones go, Detective Alonzo Harris, Denzel Washington's character from Training Day, made the list, and that movie came out in 2001. I like that movie. I think Denzel has had so many better roles than that, and he won the Academy Award for that movie, and it felt like it was one of those, we're just going to give it to him for all the wrong reasons.
He's earned it.
Yeah, he's
based on his whole filmography.
It's sort of like DiCaprio got a few years ago. It's like, no, he had better performances. It's still a great movie. I love that movie. Kevin Spacey, he should go on like the real villain list from Usual Suspects, his character there.
Kaiser Soze.
Yeah. Jack Nicholson in The Joker did make it at number 45. Where was Batman? Was he like? I feel like he was also.
He was
45.
like around the same.
Yeah, let's see.
The same.
Batman was 46.
Is that the same number?
No, so 46 and Joker's 45.
Okay.
So yeah, it's interesting that they both sort of end up there. I love that version of the Joker. It's my favorite. I don't know if it's like the best performance. Like, I wouldn't say they're so different. Like, all three Jokers. I'm only going to count the three. You know, Cesar Romero. I never really watched that series growing up. Mark Hamill, I'm not going to count because it's just animated. But as far as like Joaquin, Heath, and Jack, they're all so different. I mean, Heath is a little bit like Joaquin, representation of that character. But they're like Jack's character is more of like a gangster.
Yeah,
like,
he's a gangster. He's a mafia guy,
and he like is in love. Like he loves Vicky Vale. That's why I like all these villains are like, I want to conquer the world. Like, why? Like with Thanos, what is your motivation? I fully get Joker's motivation. Like, he wants to have sex with Kim Basinger. Like, that's like good motivation. I feel like I don't understand Thanos. Like, I want like, what does Darth Vader want? I want to conquer. Like, can't relate to that. Sorry. Let's continue. See if anything stands out. Hans Gruber comes in at 46. Hans Gruber is the greatest movie villain of all time. This list sucks.
Yes.
Alan Rickman is
his accent
is so good in this movie. I don't even want to read the rest of this list. This list sucks.
Now you got Freddy Krueger at 40.
How is Freddy? I love Freddy Krueger. How is Freddy Krueger better than Hans Gruber? It's funny is that they kind of sound like...
Frank Booth from Blue Velvet is number 36.
Cruella de Vil. I wonder how many animated movies. Did you see any animated movies for the top 100 movies? Did I like Snow White didn't make it or Pinocchio didn't make it, which is shocking. Unless we missed it.
I think I saw Fantasia in there, actually.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, Fantasia
I hate Fantasia. That movie sucks. It's so boring. Like, there's no plot. Like,
well, it's all the classical music.
I get what it is, but like
it's like bombastic.
Maybe if I was stoned, it would be like somewhat interesting.
That's a strong possibility.
Yeah, but I just want to stick with Freddy Krueger. I love Freddy Krueger, but come on, dude. Like, better than Hans Gruber.
Freddy Krueger is like.
I love Freddy Krueger. I love him.
I don't see Michael Myers. I don't see...
Nah, because those characters don't really have much depth to them.
That's true. They don't even really talk. No, Michael Myers doesn't even talk.
Neither does Jason. So yeah. I'm glad if we're going to pick a horror icon that he does make it. I'm sure we'll see some more horror icons. Of course, we actually will, because Bela Lugosi's Count Dracula from 1931's Dracula made the list, rightfully so. Clyde and Bonnie made the list. So you're saying only Thelma made the list earlier for...
Yeah, it was just Thelma. I didn't see Louise on there.
It didn't say it right after it?
No, it just said Thelma. It said Gina Davis.
Why does Bonnie and Clyde both make it for villains? Very interesting. A lot of controversy. Wait, so Gina Davis's character made it, and then...
not
who's the other? Susan Sarandon?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe she ruffled some feathers. I like this one. Martians. From The War of the Worlds from 1953. Just generic Martians. Jack Torrance.
Just as various.
I love this movie, The Shining, from 1980. So Jack, two villains. his character from One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest didn't make the list. I guess he wouldn't be like a hero. Gordon Gekko from Wall Street made this list.
People still idolize that character.
It's a great character. The Terminator, which is awesome, it made the hero list. Arnold's, Terminator from T2, and then Arnold's Terminator from the first Terminator made the list. No T2, T1000. I would have had him in this list also. How do you not have the T1000 for one of the greatest villains of all time? Let's see. The shark from Jaws. Great villain.
Bruce? Was that the shark's name?
I think it maybe
the guy that was in charge of the
yeah, I'm not sure. I've heard the Bruce thing before. The Alien from 1979's Alien.
Well, Kathy Bates from Misery is very high. I feel
Where is she at? Where is she?
She's 17.
Yeah. HAL 9000.
I mean, she was really insane in that movie.
Yeah. And it's iconic. The criteria, as we've mentioned before, the staying power. So the heroes, let's see what they said the criteria is. The jurors were limited to feature length, blah, 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 blah. All characters, whether hero or villain, were to have made a mark on American society in matters of style and substance and elicit strong reactions across time, enriching America's film heritage while continuing to inspire contemporary artists and audiences. I think the real key to a lot of these things, if you've seen these movies parodied before, I think that's a good indication of how famous they are. I've actually never seen Misery, but I've seen that clip so many times of her with the hammer and just bashing the leg with it. And it's been parodied. How many times have we seen, whether it's The Simpsons or a Family Guy or any of these, cartoons or Saturday Night Live influence, be inspired to do some form of parody with this.
That's the highest ranked Stephen King character.
What's crazy, they have Michael from Godfather. I never really saw him really as the villain.
He's like an anti-hero.
Yeah, that's stupid. Where did he make this list? Number 11 for Godfather Part 2. I'd have to rewatch it to see exactly why that is. Okay, so we're in the top 10. Top 10 greatest movie villains of all time, according to the American Film Institute. And at number 10, we do have an animated role. And we have the Evil Witch from Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, which I recently rewatched, I think within the last 3 years. It's a really good movie. I mean, it's animated awesomely. Again, I think a lot of these things wouldn't be able to be made today. Snow White's I think 14 years old in this movie.
That's supposed to be her age?
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken.
Good Lord.
Very, very young, and she's hanging out with these grown men.
Yeah, they're goofy. Yeah, but it's supposed to be funny though.
Yeah, but then also even the term dwarf probably couldn't have been used today. But this movie made bank. $1.5 million budget, made $418 million. And again, $418. That's not
these animated films from back then. Made crazy money.
Some of them bombed though. Pinocchio made nothing. Fantasia made nothing. Some of these movies made very little, and they're still culturally significant though. Number 9 on this list, Reagan from not the president, Linda Blair's character from The Exorcist. I love The Exorcist. I love that character, but they're
I was terrified of them.
It is. I'll say right now, it's the scariest movie of all time. At least for me, it is. I think it's just whether it's the way it's filmed because it's the 70s. I think the fact that this movie's pushing 50 years old, that kind of makes it creepier. Because all these people are either dead or they're just really old. For some reason, that makes me more terrified. For some reason, the way the apartments are dressed or the buildings are made, it just has that 70s vibe to it. That kind of freaks me out.
There's a film grain.
Yeah.
It just.
I'd like that film grain. I wish more movies did stuff like that. Every now and then, when a scene will be set in the 80s, they did a scene. For the most recent Halloween where they flashed back to the 70s, and they had it look just like a 70s movie. I wish movies just looked like that more often. But yeah, I love The Exorcist. Terrifying movie. Reagan's
I saw that movie when I was 8 years old.
Really?
Yeah, I don't know what my mom was doing, but oh, wow. When you're, again, we talk about this, when you're that age, you really think what you're seeing is real, too.
Yeah.
It is the most terrifying thing. It's the stuff of nightmares. I think that scene where she comes down the stairs, it's like a spider monkey.
Yeah.
Oh, my God.
What's funny
that freaked me out for a long time.
That's not actually in the theatrical cut. That was in the director's cut of that movie.
It was a deleted scene.
Yeah, they filmed it, so then, they re-released these movies so many times over the years. So whenever it was released on VHS, they added that scene into it. But from what I remember, that scene was not in that movie. But there's so many like really nasty scenes in that movie. She's like stabbing herself with a cross and oh my god, like really vulgar stuff.
Really,
when people watched that movie, they were like passing out because
people were fainting. They were.
I mean, this
they were
is the
throwing
70s.
up in the movie theater.
Think about like what movies were just like 10 years prior to that. So this is 1973, I think The Exorcist came out. So travel back like 10 years earlier. You got movies like Chitty Chitty Bang Bang and like these movies that like how do you go from movies like that to like the late 60s, early 70s? They would start to push the envelope. You had those like Hammer films, like the Dracula movie with Christopher Lee. You're starting to see blood and gore and like things that weren't allowed in movies. There's so much in the 50s. There's so much censorship. Even comic books, they had the comic code. You couldn't say certain phrases. And now in the 70s, they're like, screw that. We're gonna take back this stuff. And that's why the 70s is so revered, because you have these directors like Coppola and even George Lucas and Spielberg and Scorsese, and they were like, no, we're making the movies that we want to see.
It was radical. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Yeah. What about it? Insane movie.
Tobe Hooper.
Yeah.
When he was making that movie, this is their mindset back then. When he was making that movie, he was convinced that because if he didn't show any blood with all the murder scenes, that it would get a PG rating. Because he legitimately thought, he's like, I figured out like the loophole, like for this censorship. Like if I don't have any blood
and there is
during
no blood,
any
really.
of the murder scenes, it's gonna be PG. And like he was totally out of his mind, dude. Completely radical stuff. And I think he created that whole technique where what you don't see is so much scarier.
Less is more.
Is so much scarier than what you actually are seeing.
Well, that's why Jaws works so well. And Jaws they want to show more of the shark, but it was just malfunctioning. And I think that was a good thing that happened, because the less you see is more. You get that point of view shot of you just see the feet in the water, like. That makes it scarier. If you just see the shark and you see like a CGI shark, like not going to be as scary. But
John Carpenter did the same thing with Halloween.
Yeah.
The same thing. There's no blood. There's barely any blood.
Those movies would both be rated PG-13, except for the nudity in it, because there was no PG-13 back then. That didn't come out till the mid-'80s.
I don't think Texas Chainsaw Massacre would be PG-13.
Just because of the nudity, right? How much nudity is in that
I don't
movie?
think there was that much nudity. I think it's just that it was so graphically violent. Like, again, not what you saw on camera, though.
Yeah.
It's like it would cut. There would be a fast cut. And your own imagination would just picture whatever happened.
They do some graphic stuff in PG-13 movies, though. You'd be surprised. Like some movies you think, oh, that was PG-13? Like a movie like Taken with Liam Neeson. That's like a PG-13 movie. But in my mind, I always just thought that's an R movie. Yeah, the rating system's so weird. It's so bizarre. You're allowed to do some things. You're not allowed to do other things. The Transformers movie, we're playing the Transformers music right now. So they wanted a PG rating specifically for this movie because they thought more people would watch the movie if it was PG. They would be able to have later show times. And they also thought parents would have to accompany the child to the theater. Because if it was just a G movie, you could just drop the kids off and watch it. So specifically in that movie, there's one scene where a character, Spike, in the movie, just drops the S-bomb out of nowhere. It's the Transformers, the cartoon from the 80s that all the kids loved. He just says, "Oh, S, what are we going to do now?" And it's just out of nowhere. It was out of nowhere.
I remember, I think during the 90s, like a PG-13, you were allowed maybe like one F-bomb.
Yeah.
It was like you were given one. Mm-hmm. It was like you could do it one
they still do that
one
now.
time in the movie, and it would still be acceptable to be PG-13. It's like, but any more than one, if there's two, if there's three, any more than that, like, oh no, it's got to be R-rated.
Yeah,
it's like
so
just
weird.
the one. You're allowed one pass.
And if something's like done in an artistic way, like why is Rose allowed to be naked in Titanic? That's a PG-13 movie, and you're seeing a woman's breasts. Mm-hmm. It's like, oh, but that's like done in an artistic way. If it was done in like a pornographic type of way. It would have to be an NC-17. Like, so weird, so weird. But we got completely sidetracked. We're going over the greatest villains of all time in movie history, according to the American Film Institute. We got sidetracked at number 9. Wow, with The Exorcist. Phyllis, I've never seen this movie, from Double Indemnity?
It's a Billy Wilder
I'm not
movie.
trying to say identity because it's not spelled that way. Indemnity? It's a word I don't know, and I'm not going to even continue talking about it. We also have, let's see, number 7 on this list, Glenn Close, his character from Fatal Attraction. So a lot of females making this list. That's 4 females in a row to start the list. The Evil Queen, Reagan, then the characters from Phyllis Dietrichson and Glenn Close's character right there. So
wow.
Number 6 on this list, Mr. Potter from It's a Wonderful Life. Number 5 on the list, one of my favorite villains of all time, Nurse Ratched from One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. There's so many females right here because number 4, the Wicked Witch of the West.
I'm looking back here. There's 8 out of 10. 8 out of the top 10 heroes were male.
Yeah.
And then 6 out of the top 10 villains
are female. Yeah.
I'm looking too much into this.
What's that say about society? But the top 3 are male on this list. The Wicked Witch of the West is such a good villain, though. I mean, come on. That is like so iconic. Again, I think, like I said, how many times have you seen that film parodied? It's probably the film that's been parodied more than anything. Like, even in, like, Muppet Babies, they parody it. Even something like The Wiz, it's not really a parody. It's like a reimagination of it. The Wizard of Oz is probably the most famous movie of all time. But number 3 on this list, you can make an argument, is the most famous movie of all time as well. Actually, they have the sequel. Wow. So Darth Vader made this list, but for The Empire Strikes Back, which I like. Because in the original Star Wars, or what they later called A New Hope, he's interesting. He's definitely got a presence to him. When you first see Darth Vader, it's like, who the hell is this guy? This guy's a badass. That's a badass character. But when you get more depth to the character in Empire Strikes Back, that makes him more memorable. When he utters the line, no, I am your father. Come on. Again, talk about being parodied. How many times have we seen that scene?
It's a meme at this point.
Such a good villain. Norman Bates in Psycho, which I need to see, is at number 2.
I'm still surprised you haven't seen Psycho.
Yeah, and number 1 on the list, one of the greatest of all time. And he's such like a different type of villain. He's so cerebral. I mean, this guy is so different than a Darth Vader, so different than a Wicked Witch of the West, more so like a Nurse Ratched. Number 1 is Hannibal Lecter from The Silence of the Lambs. That movie is so good. And even like... well, what's the other guy's name?
Buffalo Bill.
Buffalo Bill. Like, he didn't make this list. I didn't see him, right?
People, he's always kind of neglected.
Yeah.
Whenever
he's
anyone
awesome
brings
in
up
that
Silence of
movie.
the Lambs. Yeah, he's very good. Mm-hmm.
That whole movie is unbelievable. I watched it in theaters, like I said, for its 30th anniversary. A must watch if you've never seen it.
I remember actually being scared of even the poster and the cover art for it, where it would have like
the
it's
moths.
like a moth that's like covering her mouth. And
yeah, I was terrified of like just a lot of
box
artwork.
art.
A lot of artwork. Because, I wasn't going to watch that movie. I didn't watch that movie till much later on in my life. What is this movie about? A lady with like a moth on her mouth? Like, that has no interest in me. But it always definitely freaked me out.
It was eerie.
Yeah.
There was something about that box, or the box art, the poster. I remember I'd be walking in the video store, and I would just be like, what is that?
I can specifically remember being in Blockbuster and seeing that.
And being scared. I was scared. I didn't even know what the movie was about.
Yeah.
I just saw Silence of the Lambs and the poster, and I was like,
There's some cool like VHS covers that stand out to me. There was a movie called Jack Frost that came out with Michael Keaton in the mid-90s. But then there was also a Jack Frost horror movie that came out like the same year. I don't know if you remember
a killer snowman.
Yeah. Do you remember
I think
that?
Shannon Elizabeth was in this.
Oh, is she?
Yes.
She's beautiful.
Oh.
But that cover was so cool because it was like that lenticular material. So if you turn it one way, it looks like a happy snowman. But then if you turn it another way, it's a deadly snowman. So I love stuff like that. Jurassic Park 2: The Lost World also had one of those covers where you have the T-Rex, and then if you turn the VHS tape, the T-Rex is like roaring and opening its mouth. I love stuff like that. Is there any like VHS tape covers that sort of stand out? Like you just were in love with it, even if you don't even like the movie?
I just remember walking through the horror section like at Blockbuster, and there were quite a few boxes that would freak me out, and Silence of the Lambs was definitely one. Even I think Dawn of the Dead. Or Evil Dead.
Evil Dead.
Evil Dead. I just the phrase Evil Dead and then the box cover.
The skull on it.
It just and I think the person's kind of being half buried alive.
Yeah.
Like that freaked me out. And I didn't even watch the movie yet. I was already scared. I was just looking at the box art and I was like, oh, I shouldn't watch this, but I want to watch this. I'm so scared.
And that's how we like decided what movie to watch when you were growing up. You didn't have a computer, or if you did, like, you know, it was so in its infancy, you couldn't just go on Google and go to a site like Rotten Tomatoes and see if this movie's even competent, or you couldn't go on YouTube and be like, well, at least I'll just watch the trailer. No, you just solely based your Friday night, you know, viewing habit based on the artwork and then the description on the back of the box. And that made for some interesting choices. You were either watching something that was going to be crappy or great, but you were stuck with it. I mean, if you made that decision to rent a movie, you had to watch it. You weren't going to rent something and just turn it off after 10 minutes. You're going to stick with it because you made
invested in it. You paid the money to rent it, so you had to watch it.
Well, your parents paid the money. The amount of crap that my parents purchased. Is there, because we are winding down the program, is there... one purchase that you could think of that, like, you're just baffled that, you know, you either A, convinced your parents to get it, or B, you just, like, immediately regretted getting it? Because I have quite a few. One that stands out is Moon shoes. I remember seeing the ad for Moon shoes. I remember going into a Toys R Us. I was like, I want Moon shoes. And then I put my Moon shoes on, and I might have used them once. And then they went directly into the garage, and I think I threw them out like last year.
I think just sticking to sneakers and shoes, I did that with the light up. Like
the LA Gears?
Yeah,
I love those. You didn't like those?
Well, they were just so... They just were so cheap because they would break, I feel like, in 2 weeks.
Oh, really? I don't remember
my parents
quality.
must have got the knockoff ones.
Yeah.
Because I would be so excited and I would get them. And then I'd be like, oh, this is so cool.
Yeah.
I got my shoes are lighting up. Every time I take a step, it's like, you know, there's lights going everywhere. And, I feel like they would always be somehow, they'd stop working within 2 weeks.
Yeah, I would imagine, like, what is that powered by? It's like a battery, or is it like solar powered? I don't know.
It was definitely some type of cheap battery.
Yeah. I wonder if I bought a pair of LA Gear, because I love collecting retro stuff. I wonder if I bought like a 30-year-old pair of LA Gears, if it would still, if you stepped, if it would still work. I doubt it, but some other bad purchases. I remember for Christmas one year, everyone around my neighborhood, or a few people, had these like electric scooters, and I really wanted one, and we got one for Christmas. I charged it, and then I lost the key to turn it on. So we got the scooter, must have cost $250, used it 0 times. Literally, 0 usage of this scooter. And again, it went in the garage, and we cleaned out the garage last year, and it went away. What just an absolute waste. The Pokemon cards, I'm looking back at that.
Oh, basketball cards. Oh.
Yeah.
I fell for that in the 90s.
Everyone did.
Yeah.
You go on the home shopping
network. We would go to the store, and then there would be a card shop, and then they had like, and they did it smart. They were smart. It was all about presentation. So you'd have like the glass display cases, and then you have the individual cards inside the display cases, and there would be like a Shaq card, and there would be like a little bit of like a hologram on it, and I would be like, oh, I got it, Mom, I want that, and it's like, so how much is that? It's like, oh, $5, $10 for that one card, adjusted for inflation.
But then it adds up. You buy so many of those. I remember going to stores, and they have the setup, like they have the packs of cards. And I remember them saying, like, somebody wrote on a sign that worked at the store, like, in this pack, there is a Michael Jordan card worth $40,000. And he could have just been lying. We had no way of, like, fact-checking, A, if that card is worth that much, or B, if there even is a possibility of that. Because if that's the case, why wouldn't I just buy, or why wouldn't anyone just buy the entire box because it only would have cost $150 to, buy, 50 packs of cards.
It was worse than that. I had binders full of college basketball cards.
No!
It wasn't even like the pros. It was like somehow they figured out a way to even market college
to
basketball
exploit these kids that got no money from
to
any of it.
exploit these college kids even more, and then have just fools like me, but like just eating that up. It's like, one of these guys is gonna like really, he's gonna be the next Michael Jordan. I gotta have that card.
And you don't even know. Maybe you have something. Like, when's the last time you've gone back?
No, I looked. I think maybe 10 to 15 years ago after I was graduating college, I had to pay back my student loans, so I just started selling everything.
Yeah.
I was selling everything, and like I remember, I looked through some of those basketball cards, and I was like, "There's got to be like one in here that's worth like $100." Dude, I was like, it was so dry.
Well,
the well was so dry. Like, I think the most expensive card I had was maybe like $5-10.
Even the cards that were worth a lot of money, because the 90s, it hit like a peak because everyone was buying baseball cards. So some of these cards were worth like $40-50. Like Barry Bonds rookie card was $40. It was always $40. Maddox rookie card was $35. McGuire rookie card, $40. Now, those are the same cards, $4, $5.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's just like, it was such like a collapse. It was
because everyone started collecting it.
Yeah,
That's why the
so
older
mass
cards,
produced.
the older cards, anything that's from like the World War II era, because the people that were collecting cards back then, first of all, they knew there was going to be no value to it, and they were like, well, whatever, we'll just toss it. Well, it's we got to sell for war bonds or whatever.
I have an uncle that like throughout most of his life he collected stamps.
Yeah.
And he collected stamps, and when he finally cashed out, like in his like late 70s, early 80s, all of it was only like $8,000.
Yeah,
for everything, and it was like Uncle Rich, like, oh my God, like your whole loot, like all these decades, and it's summed up to $8,000. You got to be careful what you collect. I mean, like, I loved that he was passionate about something, but like that was a rough one.
Wait, is he still alive, or did you find out?
Yeah, he's still alive.
Okay.
Yeah. But it's just, I remember hearing that, like the end game of that.
Yeah.
Like, I started getting nervous for like stuff that I collect. I'm like, oh man, what did I do? But the thing is, like stamps, the speculation is that it's always like the price you paid for it. Like back then, it's the price is on it.
Yeah.
Like it says what it is, like 3 cents, 5 cents, 32 cents, like depending on which year or decade that you bought it. But yeah, oh man, what a speculative like collection that,
even coins
that did not turn out well.
Speaking of like pricing things, like I remember, I think it was like the turn of the century, they're like, we're going to have new quarters that have like the states on the back. And I was like, oh, we got a book, and we were like, all right, we'll put the New York one. Like they had like a map of the United States, and we were like we got the Hawaii one, and those are probably worth just a quarter now.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
there's no value to any of them.
That's why now I'm 36 years old now. I'm very hesitant whenever I see something limited edition, collector's edition. If it says that, then I'm like very skeptical. It's like they're telling me that, but they're secretly like mass producing this.
Yeah. Well, we're into the video game scene, and it's so weird. Some of these games are so valuable. There is a lot of value to it, and you're always wondering, like, okay, should I buy this game and just keep it sealed and put it in my closet, and then 15 years from now it's going to be worth $1,000? Like, you never know. Like, what's the reasoning behind some of these games just becoming what they become? Some of these games, even newer games that are like 5-10 years old, some of them are very pricey, hundreds of dollars. You never know what is going to hit, what's not going to hit. Some things are very big for a while, and then they get oversaturated, like comic books. Once that Death of Superman comic book came out, everyone's like, that's going to be the most valuable comic book ever. The Death of Superman. You want to know what happened? Everyone bought the Death of Superman comic book, so it's worth nothing.
It's not worth anything. It's like less than $5, right?
I mean, but I still have it, and I collect it. I don't collect things for the value. I don't collect things because I think that it's going to be worth a lot of money later on. I collect things because they have a significance in my life. So I'll collect things that meant something to my childhood, or it was something in my childhood that I always wanted. Like, I always wanted that movie. I always wanted that game. I always wanted that comic book. I always wanted the Death of Superman comic book. So I got it. And I know it's not going to have any value, but it's presented proudly on my shelf. Like, that's the reason why I collect things. And I think that's the reason why people should collect things. Your uncle kind of reminds me of, you ever seen the Simpsons episode where Marge takes that like antique to John Waters' character? And I
didn't see this. No.
Okay, so she has this like old Civil War heirloom.
Okay.
It's an episode where Homer thinks Bart is gay. It's a really good episode, and she takes this heirloom to John Waters, you know, the famous director. I forget his character's name, but he owns like this shop that buys stuff, and he's like, oh, this is worthless. This is actually a bottle of booze. And he like unscrewed the head of like the heirloom and just started drinking it. So like, that's exactly like she thought, okay, my aunt died. Like, I'm going to sell her like heirloom. I'm going to make millions. And then it ends up being nothing. So
yeah,
I like going to garage sales though and finding stuff. You never know what you could find.
Oh, absolutely. There's always like a scene for that. Yeah. I used to go to that stuff when I was younger. Like I said, when I was like around the age where I was trying to pay off all my student loans.
Yeah.
You were just like figuring out any creative way you could to like just flip a couple of dollars so I could pay back my student loans.
Yeah.
And there's also a scene where you go to estate sales, like someone passes away, and then like everything inside the house, like the family opens up their house, and everything in the house is for sale, and it's a very interesting experience.
It's kind of sad.
It is sad, but there's people that show up to get like a number to be like the first one in there.
Yeah.
They show up at like 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning and they take a number and then they wait. And it's the craziest thing to me. I've gone to those. I've seen people, I'm not even joking, they have hard hats with like lights on them.
Yeah.
Like they're going into like underground or like they're going into a cave. They're going to be searching through all the attics and the basements.
I love seeing the people with the like the metal detectors.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
It's kind of cool. Like I don't know, anybody that has a hobby and is like passionate about it. Again, I said this earlier, I can never judge anybody for any of their interests. I collect VHS tapes and action figures. Like, I have no right to critique a dude going around a beach with a metal detector. So all the power to him.
I want to talk to that guy. Like, whenever I see the guy, like, he's got like this weird, like, it's kind of like a headphones thing. Like, it's like a sonic.
It makes different sounds.
It's like a sonic noise. I don't know. And he's walking around and he's just looking for like any precious metals that are going to be washed up on the beach.
You can find some. There's a YouTube channel I follow. This guy, LA Beast, and he usually just eats all expired food as his shtick. But recently he got the metal detector, and he's just going around his backyard, and he's finding coins from like 75 years ago, and some of it has value to it.
Like it was in his
own backyard. Yep. Somebody might have just dropped some spare change 100 years ago, and I wonder what's in my backyard. But actually, Brian, that's actually going to do it for this edition of the Radio Rumble. We are going to play your song that you want to hear, "Who'll Stop the Rain" by Creedence Clearwater Revival. Thank you for coming down.
Always a pleasure, Justin. Looking forward to it. I hope to come back soon.
Oh, you're always, it's an open invitation for you, Brian. All right, let's end with some CCR. Don't go anywhere, though. Ooh, Essential 80s is coming up next.